Harry, are you gonna cue us? Is he cueing us? Okay. Welcome to the New World Order. Woo! Happy social distancing from the Criminal Justice Insider with Babz, Rawls, Ivy, and Jeff Grant. How are you all today?
Hey, Babz.
How you doing? Thank you for pulling this off.
I'm getting to see your new crib.
I know. Look. This is very invasive because now I have to actually like clean and move stuff around.
You know, back of me, this is my set for the stuff I do all day long. You know.
You got. If people could see that beautiful space for real for you, let me tell you something. So listen, you're listening to the Criminal Justice Insider. It becomes a podcast after the fact. With Babz, Rawls, Ivy, and Jeff Grant. And we are seeking to be the voices of criminal justice. And so now we're on Zoom because the pandemic has got everybody socially distancing. So the show is still happily sponsored by the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven.
It is.
And we are happy to have our friend as our guest today, Tiheba Bain, founder of Women Against Mass Incarceration. But before we bring her on, let's just catch up a little bit. Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing well, Babz. You know, I feel like all the crap we've been through in our lives has prepared me for this. You know, I mean, this is terrible, and it's so much personal and community trauma, but my God, some of the stuff we've been through in our lives and our incarceration journeys and health journeys and all kinds of relationship journeys have just, you know, it feels bigger, but at the same time, I feel a sense of calm and like I've been through this before, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's quite challenging.
It's challenging.
I feel like I'm in one of those dystopian movies. Like, I feel like Will Smith should like pop out in a minute and rescue us.
No, we are in a dystopian movie. Yeah. This is the book of Eli or whatever.
Oh my God. So shout out to Lynn Springer.
And Andrew Kaplan, our loved ones. Lynn's downstairs right now, and I have the door to my office locked, so I won't be bothered by the pets and Lynn.
So let me tell you a little bit about Tiheba Bain. She is the director of coalitions for the National Council for Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls. She works with various organizations around the country, building out coalitions surrounding criminal justice reform. She also founded Women Against Mass Incarceration, a grassroots nonprofit organization empowering the justice activism of women and girls. She's originally from Brooklyn. Brooklyn in the house! Tiheba became a justice education scholar in the summer of 2016. She describes her time in the justice and education program as challenging, as she was just beginning to work full-time and was concurrently taking other classes. But she remains grateful for the support of her classmates and teachers. She recently graduated with a dual bachelor's degree in psychology and women in criminal justice from CUNY, a baccalaureate interdisciplinary and unique studies program. I'm a CUNY grad too. I went to Baruch, Master's in Public Administration. She's a contributing published author to race education and reintegration, and she assisted with the legislation of Senate Bill 13 in Connecticut, which concerned the fair treatment of incarcerated persons. Whether she's advocating for the policy changes or providing direct services for policy changes or providing direct services to women and girls, Tiheba has dedicated her life to making change within the criminal justice system. And we are so very delighted to have her back to talk to us about what is the issue of the day, Ms. Tiheba.
Well, from what I'm understanding, I believe we're going to do a little background about who I am and then go into my initiatives in which I'm working on. However you want to play it, that's fine with me. But
No,
you just gave.
that's perfect. Hey, I'll tell you, Tiheba, why don't you be the host and we'll be the we'll be the guests. It'd be perfect.
Oh, really? Okay. So I can do that.
Tell us your background, Tiheba. Tell us what led you to the criminal justice system and
Okay.
tell us your backstory.
Okay, well, originally, like, thank you, Babz, for that great introduction. Thank you, Jeff and Babz, for having me on your show. This is a great opportunity, and I greatly appreciate it. I do know Andrew Kaplan, so hi to Andrew. He's a dear person. So, and a dear friend that I met many years ago. So I just want to say I didn't know you guys like was like connected like that. So that's a great thing to know. Like you never know who knows who, right? Um,
Right.
right. So well, Babs, exactly. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, and my criminal justice background comes from the lifestyle that I've lived as a young adult, and watching, just experimenting with life. I um, I was getting in trouble as a young person, but I was still in school. So I lived a double life. So let me just say that I was a straight A student. I love school, but I felt like there was something more that I was missing. And I started smoking weed. First it was drinking beer, then it was smoking weed, then it was, doing harder drugs. And I found myself in a loop of chaos and not knowing how to get out. And then you get out for a little bit and then some way it suck you right back in. And for many years that has happened from the age of 17 or 16 on.
Mm.
I was imprisoned in York Correctional Facility a couple of times. I actually went to Rikers Island as a juvenile for
Mm.
buying drugs. And that was the first time I've ever like experienced any type of criminal justice, you know, action. So I was like, what? I'm just buying marijuana, right? But they didn't care, so they arrested me for it, and I spent a couple of nights, well, one night actually in what they call the bullpen, and I was so scared, but it didn't scare me straight, right? So
Mm.
because here I am again, getting in trouble again. Here I am getting in trouble again. I was just
Funny the way you said that because that is the mind of young people.
but yeah, and it
You know,
is.
that's what we're seeing with young people. Like
Right.
the first time you go to jail, for some kids that's enough, but for the majority, it's not enough.
And it's not. And people, I mean, and the efforts are great, but it didn't scare me straight. And nobody came to my school to give me that scare straight program. My life gave me a scare straight program, but I was so daring, right? I wanted to know, yeah, I could do this. I could do this because, and I think that played a part on when I'm the youngest, right, in my family. They used to call me the baby, and I can't stand it still to today. And the reason why is because I think it's because they always said, "Oh, Tiheba, you can't do that. Tiheba, you can't do this." And I always wanted to prove that, yeah, I can, but in a negative way, in a way in which it caused me a lot of grief, suffering, and pain, not just for me, but for my family. Um, good heavens, I woke up and understood that, no, you don't need to do that. And even though you can, it doesn't mean it's beneficial for you to do it. So, in the process of all of this, I got in trouble when I moved to I moved to New London, Connecticut. And when I was in New London, Connecticut, I got in more trouble than I did in New York. Now it's funny because I moved to New London to keep from getting in trouble, right?
Mm.
However, when I got into New London, I saw like, you know, things were a little different and I figured that I can get away with a little more stuff. And I did for a little while, but then it caught up to me and I wound up going to York Correctional Facility maybe like 3 times. And to the point where it wasn't called York at that time, it was called Niantic. To the point where I was actually in Niantic watching them dig up and lay ground for York Correctional, what is now called York Correctional.
Mm-hmm.
And so that dates me to back how far I was getting
Mm.
in and out of trouble.
Mm.
Um, it still didn't deter me from doing what I wanted to do as far as a criminal lifestyle because I was also using drugs. So that also altered my mindset and my rational thinking. It was no rational thinking. It was Taiba, you do what you want to do, and that's it. Then um, I was going to school. I was still in school. I dropped out, but then I went back to college after getting my GED in York Correctional Facility. Um, and I started going to Three Rivers Community College. And when I went to Three Rivers Community College, I majored in business, and I wasn't ready because I was living in a shelter. I had my first son. I was living in a shelter. I was trying to do everything right, but things just didn't seem to go well. So I resorted back to what I knew, which was drugs and selling drugs and just doing things that led me into prison for 10 years. Um, Now I went to federal correction. I went to a federal prison for 10 years, got sentenced to 135 months
Oh
under
my
kidnapping.
gosh.
Yeah. I know. When I said at first they were trying to give me life.
How old were you, Tiheba, when you got that sentence?
I was 32, I believe.
And what were you sentenced for?
I was sentenced for kidnapping under attempted murder guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
Because and in a federal prison, it's a little different in the way they sentence. They
Mm-hmm.
don't sentence directly for the crime itself and say, well, you're just going to be looked at for that particular crime.
Yeah.
They actually have guidelines and yes, Jeff, you know that. So they give you a category and they give you levels.
Mm-hmm.
And because my category was a level 4, a 3 or a 4, I'm not sure. That means that I have gotten in trouble too many times before
prior.
that time.
Yeah, prior. Yeah.
And they put me on a level, I believe 4, and my category was a level 35. So when I first stood in front of the magistrate, they said, "Oh, you're looking at life in prison." I said, "Whose life? I didn't take a life. I'm not giving a life."
Mm-hmm.
And after litigation and going back and forth to court, pre-trial and everything, I was sentenced to 135 months in prison, which equals up to 10 years and I think 6 months, something like that.
Yeah.
Or 11 years and 6 months. I'm not even sure.
Yeah.
But I did my time day for day, basically. I got out in 2011.
How much time did you serve behind bars?
9 years. Okay, behind bars, not including halfway house, just behind bars.
Before halfway house.
9.5 years.
That's a long time.
And
where'd you serve?
I did most of my time in Danbury, but I also went to Texas for FMC, Carswell, where I spent like a year and a half, almost 2 years there, for a program.
That's the medical center, right?
Yes, that's the medical center. Mm-hmm. Babz, what were you saying? I'm sorry.
So you start this. You're 32.
Yeah.
And you get this huge sentence. So what happens with your family? What do you say to them? What do they say to you? How do you get prepared for this?
Well, so one thing about, I left 2 sons. Thank you for asking about that. I left 2 sons behind when I went to prison. My sons was 3 and 7. When I came home, they were 17 and 14.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you can't prepare. The one thing that I think I did that did not cause harm was tell them they did not cause more harm was tell them the truth. Right? I didn't tell them I was in school. I didn't tell them I was in the army. I didn't tell them any of it. I told them exactly where I was and why from the beginning. Because I did not want my family to give them false hope. They were already suffering, and they didn't want them to suffer looking for me and, waiting for me and why mommy isn't coming home. And then they come to visit. If they were to come to visit, they come to visit into a situation to where they see their stuff getting taken away from them, putting in a locker, and they see these police officer looking people with tasers and guns coming into the prison. So I think that caused less harm than what it could have if I would have lied to them.
Sure.
So that was the first point of preparing for what I knew I was going to be facing. And it was it was a better adjustment for them as well because they knew what they were coming into. My sister-in-law, I had great support from my family. My sister-in-law and my brother took my children. First, it was a little up and down. It was crazy. It was like they didn't know where my kids was gonna go. I just said, don't put them in foster care. I didn't care what they did. I just didn't want them in foster care. So at first, my grandmother had one, and then my brother had another, and my sister had one. And I said, okay, well, long as they're in the family, but let them know that they're brothers and keep them together as much as possible. Then my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, she took on the burden of caring for both of my children, and her life changed because of it. And she was willing to do that. So I have the utmost respect for my sister-in-law, and I don't call her my sister-in-law. I call her my sister, because she did that for me. And even to this day, like I live in this apartment. She and my brother bought this house. And when I came home from prison, I was looking for an apartment in New York to bring my kids and to start my life all over again. And it was very difficult. And my brother needed somebody to rent the bottom floor from his house, and we worked it out to where I now rent and have been renting this bottom apartment since 2013.
Where's this?
In Bridgeport, Connecticut. Bridgeport, Connecticut.
We know Bridgeport.
Yeah.
So Tiheba, as you were doing this 9 years, when did it shift for you? Because everybody has this moment, at least, well, let me not say everybody, but from everyone that Jeff and I have talked to, they have this epiphany, this moment where something clicks and they change, the internal possesses you to change the trajectory of your life. When did you have that moment where you're like, all right, I got to do something else.
Yeah, at some point it's prison bad, service good.
Yeah. Okay, so during the time of my 10 years, because I rounded off because I did 10 years. I started in the beginning. Like as soon as I knew what was going to happen, actually even before then, when I realized what actually happened after I came off my drunken stupor or whatever it is I was on, after the initial crime had taken place, I went home and I knew then. I knew, right, actually during the process, I knew like my life was going to change. I didn't know how much it was going to change, but I knew it was going to change because of everything that took place. And so when I got home after the date of the initial crime, I just held on to my children and told them I'm sorry. Like I knew. And that was the moment that I knew that no matter what happened, I was not going to come home or be the same person after that day. So when I went into prison, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what time I was going to get, but I knew that no matter what time I was going to get or how much time they were going to impose on me, I was going to better myself from the onslaught. Like I wasn't going to wait and they say, oh, well, let me see. Nope. I went in there with a mindset of I'm going to be a better mother to my children upon release, no matter what. And I also made a prayer to the Lord and I said, God, if I don't let me come home. Like seriously, like I didn't want to come home the same person I knew where I was going. I was a good person. I was a legal secretary. I worked in a law firm. I was going to school. I'm a paralegal. I was going to school for paralegal. But when I was in the midst of my trouble, my chaos. So that's why I say I lived a double life. It's not like I was living a life of crime and wasn't doing anything else. I was a mother. I was a student. I was an employee. I went to courts with my boss. I mean, I had a nice life. And I chose, it's not even a choice of a conscious choice. It was just a choice of habit to mess it up with the drugs. And had I not been on drugs, I believe I would not have done half of the stuff I've done. But I knew that from the beginning that I wanted to be a different person. And I wanted my sons to have a mother who they could look up to because their father was in jail before that.
Talk a little bit to people about what it's like to be on the inside. Because I think there is a lot, I know there's a lot of misconceptions about what happens in prison when women go to prison. And, you know, up until Orange is the New Black, it was all sort of just fictional and violent and just when I went off to do my time, my family was so unbelievably worried because they just had this idea of what they saw in the movies of how it was going to be. And when I got there, it was so not any of that. I mean, of course, there was instances of violence, and you had people who, I don't care where you put them, they're going to have a tough time. But it was not the prison of my imagination. Right. So talk a little bit about your experiences and what you dispel some of the myths. Talk a little bit about some of the truths and your own personal experiences being incarcerated.
Okay. The myths of prison is not everybody. People are not going to. People are going around raping people. That doesn't happen often. It has happened, but it's not a norm, right? For the women, we have a nurturing spirit. Women naturally are nurturers, and we naturally gravitate to help and to assist in the life of ourselves and others. And because we in prison, that does not stop. That is more amplified, if you ask me, in a sense where we have to draw off of each other's strength, and we have to become a family within the prison system to combat the emotions, the heavy emotions that we carry daily while we're in there. There are troubles and there's things that does happen. One of the things that I know that happens is a lot of suicide attempts and suicides. And that's because of the mental anguish that happens while you're in prison, right? You go through a psychological shift that people don't know and you can't really express. And the people that's in there that works inside the prisons, they're working from academic perspective for the most part, to the point where they don't understand the humanistic part of what is happening to that person. So they want to constantly give them psychotropical medicines to keep them from acting out, so to speak, right? But if you just listen to the person and understand, you don't necessarily have to administer all of those psychotropical meds, because there's and not everybody in there have a mental illness. So the first thing you do, if you tell a person, you say, I'm feeling depressed, and the first thing they want to do is give you a medicine. And that shouldn't be the case. But that makes their job easier. So that's something that happens. And far as the population itself is just like at home. We have cliques, we have groups, we have entities, we have religions, we have all of that. Everything that happens in regular society happens in prison, but on a smaller scale and in a confined and condensed space. So everyone knows who, but it's not as much hate as it is in the society, because we know that even though I may believe different than you believe, or I may behave differently than you behave, we still need to draw off of each other to survive this place where we're at. And like, I can only speak for the women because I'm not a man and I've never been in a women's prison, thank God. But for us, we kind of, it's a social norm for us to commingle and to have a mother. That's my prison mother, right? That's my prison auntie. That's my sister. And that's how we survive and adapt to a place of confinement that we weren't created to be in, right?
So Tiheba, people don't know that there's really a community in prison. It's not really an isolated place. There's a whole vibrant community trying to survive and succeed and take care of one another. And I think, at least in my experience, for many people, it's the first or maybe the healthiest community that they've ever been in. And can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, because some people, I'm gonna go back to the isolation. It's isolated from the community, from the norm of society.
Yeah.
The punishment is to take you away from everything that you know, everything that you love, and everybody that loves you, and isolate you. What they don't know is, and what happens, and because of that, is because you now become that community that thrives off of each other.
Mhm.
Um,
Because the
and
natural order of things, people will create community for good or bad.
exactly,
I mean, this is why
exactly,
gangs exist and young people gravitate to gangs because people want to feel some connection
yeah,
to something.
exactly. Um, and that's the thing, right? So when you talk about the people that come home and that this is a better place for them because they didn't know anything better, yeah, that happens a lot. And when you're the person that's in prison that's doing 5, 10, 15, 25 years, and you see those people coming back, if you shouldn't judge them, you should know them, you should get to understand why you keep coming back. And I'm going to say that because, and I'm going to bring this up because when I was in prison during my time, I've seen people coming in and out, and I was like, girl, I'm trying to get home, why are you coming back? And they would tell me their story. Some of them would be like, I went back into the neighborhood and got drawn back into the drugs, the gangs, and the mischief that they already knew. And then some people would just tell me how um, there were no programs in the community for people that's coming home from prison. And I was like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? And then I seen the population of the people coming in younger and younger. And that made me question again, like, what's really going on, and why these young girls coming into prison? And you think about the crack era, right? The war on drugs, right? And how all of the people, including myself at one point, was using drugs. And those babies that I seen coming into the prison were the um were the residue, if I wouldn't say residue, but what was the crack era, right? Was extended from the crack era, where their mothers wasn't there to raise them right and stuff like that. So I heard all of these stories. So when I realized that that was the case, and I knew that they were scared, and I seen a lot more suicide attempts happening, and then one day this lady actually did hang herself in general population, I was like, oh my gosh, so something has to happen. So when that happened, I created a program where inside of prison, right before I left, because this was like maybe 3 months, 6 months, 3 to 6 months out before I was leaving. And I created a program that for the long termers, they would be like a buddy system, like a mentee and a mentor to the young ones that's coming in for the adaptation period, so they can adapt and have them for a year. Because a lot of people are getting sucked in by predatory people, because there are predators in the prison that look for women and young girls that's coming in and to take advantage of. So to keep them from that population as well, and as well as to help them adapt into this new population, into this new world that they have no idea what to happen and what to expect. Because as Babz said, they're thinking about the prison they see on TV, right? They're not thinking about the reality. And then when they get in there, they don't know where to go, how to do. So the program actually met them at the door, and they carried them for a year to help them adapt. And
Mm,
everybody, and it was a win-win for everyone. I left it in the hands of a good friend of mine
mm.
who is no longer with us. Unfortunately, she passed away. And she gave me report backs on how good this program was taken off. And I made sure she had support from the warden, the captain, the psychiatrist, and every other administrative person that she needed to be in contact with before I left. And it went well.
Mm.
Okay, so you're out.
Yep.
And talk a little, because we got about about a good 20 minutes, and I want to get to the work that you're doing now, because you're really doing some groundbreaking stuff. So you get out, you have some place to go, you reunite with your kids. What do you do for money? How do you get a job? What do you do for work? And then I want you to go right into talking about the programs, the first program that you ever created around the work that you do.
Okay. So when I first came home, it was hard for me to get work. I never had a problem until I came home, and I was shocked.
Sure.
But I went to school. School was my outlet and my footing in order for me to sustain myself and my family. I went to school. I graduated with my bachelor's degree, my associate's degree first, and then I moved to get my bachelor's degree. And as you read earlier, and with the CUNY BA Interdisciplinary Baccalaureate program, it was a dual degree in psychology and women in criminal justice. And during that time, I worked freelance, doing floor care because I learned how to do floor care while I was in prison. So I would go around doing floor care for people. I cleaning windows and stuff like that. I also worked as a maintenance person at part-time after school for a year. It was a year program. I went to a lot of different programs to become more marketable in the state of New York, because that's where I was at for the first few years of my reentry post conviction. So I went to what's that? Fortune Society. I went to Osborne. I did all the programs in Fortune Society, all the programs in Osborne, College of Community Fellowship, College Initiative. They were the College of Community Fellowship and College Initiative helped me get into school and helped me sustain myself throughout school because work was difficult.
Is that Vivian Nixon's
yes, it is. Yes.
Nonprofit? Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Vivian Nixon, yep. And she's like a mother to me. And she helped me a lot, her and her staff, and they're like my family, extended family as well. Even to today, huh?
In the God box, right?
All over. Even today, if I need them, I go to them and I cry on their shoulders, and they would just like, okay, Tiheba. Yeah. And so that's what really sustained me, Babz, like during my first few years. And then I got a job working. Somebody introduced me to a job where I was at for a year and a half. In my latter days of school, I was working at Faces New York. And Faces New York, where is a place where we actually assisted people that's infected and affected with HIV and AIDS. And I was what was I there? A program coordinator there. I had to remember. I was a program coordinator there, and I actually worked with the women, and it was a blast. And then I was headhunted by another organization, which didn't. I left Faces and went there, and 4 months later they fired me because I wasn't able to get into the prison in New York. I was so upset. Anyway, and at that time I was unemployed, so I went again to do freelance work. I worked Uber and Lyft. I worked, what else did I work? Oh, I did paper route. First time in my life ever.
That's awesome.
I've never done a paper route until then. I was like, oh my God, this is horrible, right? So, but I had to do what I had to do. And again, I took out loans and stuff to keep a roof over my sons and my head. And today, but all the while, I was still doing the work. I was still, it didn't matter. I still had to do the work. I mentor women that's coming home from prison, that's looking to go to school, that does trauma survive, domestic violence survive, intimate partner relationship survive. I mentored all of these women throughout this whole process. And I had a mentoring group that actually we mentored everywhere, and that's where Women Against Mass Incarceration come from in 2015, because we are against mass incarceration, and we mentored throughout the whole time of, no matter what. We met in libraries, we met in coffee shops, we met on the phone, we took them to McDonald's, whatever we can take them. And we're operating not on funding, we're operating on the money out of our pockets. And because I didn't know any better, I didn't know how to get funding and stuff like that. And I wasn't a 501c3, but I did corporate in New York, and then I switched my corporation to Connecticut. And today, working, and I've always been a member. I've been a member of the National Council for Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls since 2014 or 15, one of them years. I think it was created in 14, and I became a member late 14, early 15. And I was just rocking with them, which was great. Awesome. We did a lot of work together as well. Anytime they needed me, I was there. Then last year they offered, almost 2 years ago, they offered me a position as the director of coalitions, and I accepted that. Now, mind you, all the work that I was doing I was in New York, but I was still affiliated with organizations here in Connecticut, like the Phoenix Association, because that's how I know Andrew. I met him with Vivian Blackford at her home. And Steve Lanza. I was sent to Steve Lanza from Cheryl Wilkins in New York, talking about go to family reentry. That was before you actually became the ED. And I went and talked to Steve. You was already a part of it, but you wasn't the ED, because I went to talk to him.
Steve was my mentor. So
see?
Yeah.
And I went to talk to Steve, and Steve connected me to Vivian. Actually, he connected me to Kumar, and so forth and so on.
Yeah.
So, and then I became a part of ACLU Smart Justice, and all of this time, things are rolling. And when they offered me the position at the National Council, I figured it was a perfect fit, because I was already doing the work. I was already a member, and they were my family, right? And so we have been growing ever since. So the initiatives that I do now, and my boss, she don't like me to call her boss Andrea James. She said she hates that word. But my ED, she doesn't like that word. My executive director, and my sister, and whom I love and care for, and I believe she's a marvelous woman. She's very brilliant. She afforded me a hub, a place, a solid place, a tangible place here in Bridgeport, where she said she would be remiss if she just expected me to build out coalitions, because of the energy that I showed her concerning the work that I do here in Connecticut, and how I want to connect the National Council with Connecticut. And she said, well, Tiheba, you know what? I'm going to give you a place to work out of. And I'm like, are you sure? And she was like, yeah, absolutely. I was like, okay, great. So I have a hub, and I do participatory defense out of that hub. I'm mentoring out of that hub. I do, what else do we do? Oh, we do Women and Women Girl Talk on Monday nights. It was geared towards the women in the halfway house, but I've been having a hard time getting them to the office. Well, right now, nobody's coming to the office. I'm creating a coffee shop in that space called Whammy's Cup of Joe. Yeah. That's long. Oh my God. That's another elephant, because I didn't even know what I was getting myself into, because the health department, fire department, oh my gosh, zoning, it's a lot of money, and that's coming out of my pocket, right? So it's a lot. But anyway, and I still do the work of advocacy, legislative advocacy, and political education. I've learned a lot working under Andrea and of the team that we work under and work with. And I know that, there's things that I did not know that I know now, that I'm actually teaching the women and the people that I'm bringing into the space. And it wowed them just as much as it wowed me. But we don't know better if we don't do better if we don't know better. So
this is a good place to ask you to bring it to this particular moment. and I don't know of anybody who would know this better. Where do you see the holes in where we are in reentry today? Although I will say we've come a long way in this reentry conversation, but
Yes.
where I think now we ought to be um, um, uh, working on things that are where people are falling through. Like, where are the holes that could be plugged in the reentry conversation? Legislatively, that you think we ought to be doing? What should the community do? How can people sort of be more pro? How can people sort of put some resources and time around how to make reentry much more successful than we're seeing? I don't know if that's a lot of question, I think, but I think you might be suited to answer this better than anybody.
Okay, so legislatively, I believe we all need to become aware. We need to know how it works. The legislative office works. We need to know from municipal, local, state, federal, on all levels, and become um, knowledgeable on how the bills that are created affect our lives, right? And how we, the people, can create bills and have them presented and passed. Because I didn't know this until I met Arvia Walker and I started working with SB 13. And
I
it
know
was
Arvia Walker from
a
Planned Parenthood. I serve on the Planned Parenthood Southern New England Board, and she just
yes,
left us to go do a gig in DC.
I know. But you know what? She is so dope, right? That's so she's
That
my
girl is a
mentor.
force.
Yeah, she's my mentor, right? Oh, and by the way, she sits on the board of WAMI too, by the way.
Oh,
Women
okay.
Against Mass Incarceration. She sits on the board. She's the co-chair. I'm the chair, she's the co-chair. And so yeah, and I learned a lot. So we he did the word of God says, my people perish for lack of knowledge, right? So I think we need to become knowledgeable about the legislation because the legislation passed laws in which the which are enforced by the law enforcement and governed by other entities, which actually affects us negatively. So once we understand what they are, we need to get out there. We need to utilize our voice. We need to be proactive. We need to say, no, this is what we want to do. This is who we are. This is we're not going anywhere, and we need to start becoming lobbyists and fighting for the rights in a legislative pool that affects us and our communities. That's number one. Um, Community needs to have a more broad mind. I live in Bridgeport, and the work that I do is now focused in Bridgeport because I realize that we need a lot of work. We need, and it's not saying that they're dumb or they're stupid. It's not saying that at all. What it's saying is that they've been hoodwinked for so long they don't know who to trust anymore, right? So I believe that the community needs to come together and come up with a solution and a plan that works for their particular community. Get together. When I was growing up, we had neighborhood watches.
Yes.
Right? My grandmother didn't have to be down the road when I was acting up and being mischievous, right? She didn't need to be down there because Miss Ann was down there. And if I messed up down the road, Miss Ann, the Tiheba. I'm me being Tiheba, assassin. What you don't be calling my name? Oh, I'm getting two whippings. Two. I'm getting one from Miss Ann, and Miss Ann is gonna take
And
my
one
behind.
grandmother.
And my grandmother gonna really wear me out, right? So that's what's missing. The community taking care and governing
Now, we're not
the
saying we
community.
want people to beat other people's kids. What we're saying is that the community paying attention of us by us is no longer. We don't have that sense of community.
Exactly. No, by
That's
all means, I don't want nobody to beat other people's kids either, because sure don't want you putting your hands on my kids, but I want you to be able to say, "Come on, let's
yeah,
go. I'm gonna take it to your mother," right?
yeah.
And my kids shouldn't sass you. My kids shouldn't sass you because if they sass you, then I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get the kid. I'm not gonna get the grown up. So and that's what's missing, like the community governing the community. We
Mm,
Yes.
we
yeah.
trying we looking at we have an initiative called Reimagining Communities, right? A lot of things that I do stem from the National Council because I believe in the model, right? And we have a model called Reimagining Communities. The Reimagining Communities is basically community reinvestment, community, divesting in the court system and reinvesting in the communities, right? And we also looking to bring in. That's why when we with the hub, when I looked for my space, my office space, which we call the hub, I didn't look for it in downtown Bridgeport.
Mm.
I didn't want it downtown Bridgeport because that's not my community. I wanted it in the smack of the community
Where
with,
people are.
exactly. So my office is at 840 State Street, on right next to Awesome Sauce, like right there. As soon as you right? And it's across the street with people that drink, hang out on the corner, sitting there, and I go, hey, how y'all doing? Every morning, every time I'm over there, hey, how y'all doing? Good morning, y'all doing good? All right, good, everything good. Just to make sure and let them know, look, this is a friendly face. I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to put you out there. I'm not here to, that's not for that. This is what we love on you, even in the midst of your mess or your chaos or whatever it is you're going through, because it's mess to me, but it's not mess to you.
Tahiba,
Right.
I grew up in an affluent suburb,
Mm-hmm.
and that's my story. But the truth is that I was raised without any character. It's what the Italians call mal educato. I was poorly bred,
Okay.
and so I was destined for trouble. And so without real parental guidance in a community that's going to take care of you, it really doesn't make a difference where you are. In my opinion, you're going to either wind up on the right side of things or not. And I think it's the parents' job to make sure that their kids are on the right track. And if they're not going to do it, if they're not going to do it, then don't be shocked at the consequences. It's a time bomb waiting to go off.
Well, I think if you have parents who aren't able, right,
That's true.
can't, who for whatever reasons can't parent. I have four children that I adopted, and I have four children who were adopted because their biological people weren't in a position to raise them.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I can say about that. There's no judgment to that because these people allowed me to be a parent. Otherwise, I would not have been a parent without, which is a weird sort of a weird position to be in, to sort of say because somebody else's misfortune, it was my gain. But I got to raise four amazing kids. But that's to my point, that the community has to go back to its roots at some point to figure out how we're going to do this reentry thing. So Tiheba, talk a little bit about where do you see reentry going? Like what do we need on top of what we are already doing?
We need community. We need to be united, a united front. We are better together than divided.
Mm.
We need to stop judging, and we need to stop pointing the fingers, and we need to, as Jeff said, look at ourselves and figure out, I think it was Gandhi that said, be the change you want to see in the world, right?
Mm.
I want to be the change that I want to see in the world. So I'm not going to say, oh, it's you anymore. That's a sense of entitlement. I'm saying the community needs to look at the community. We need to vote the people in that's going to do the work for us. And if you are scared to vote, then get somebody else out there to do it for you. If you're scared to speak, not vote. If you're scared to speak, then get somebody out there to do it for you. I'm not scared. You should be scared to vote. Vote. But if you are scared to speak, get somebody out there to do it for you. Call me. I don't have a problem. I'm not scared of the politicians. I'm not scared of the political arena and any space in which I enter. I come in expecting to have that combat, because you're not going to like everything that I say, and I'm sure not going to like everything you say. So that's what needs to be happening. We need a spokesperson in the communities of color, and I'm going to speak about the communities of color, to say what our people need. We need to take a survey of all the communities of the residents in the community, asking them what it is they see their community needing. And then we need to take action. We need to go to the city council meetings. We need to sit on the community boards. We need to sit on the boards that they have many seats on, but they don't want to give them up, and people don't know about them, and they don't know about them because they're not being told about them. So that's what the community is meeting as far as reentry. And the reentry people population, I'm gonna tell you right now, like, they are so. I sat on the task force, right, for collateral consequences.
Yeah.
with Robin Porter,
He's
I'm
my
sorry.
good friend. Robin Porter, State Rep Robin Porter is my good friend and my love.
Yes.
And she's one of these people out there who are stomping these streets and doing this work for real.
Exactly. And Robin Porter with Avia, she sits on the board too. Okay. Because Robin believes in me, and I appreciate and love Representative Porter. Like, I don't know, like, her and Avia, they're the ones that took me under their wing 2 years ago, possibly 3 years right now, and showed me parts of Connecticut that I needed to see. In that area of litigation, I mean legislation and governmental politics, right? And so a lot of things Robin do, she tried to include me in on it, which I'm grateful for. Her and ACLU Smart Justice, Mel and Dave, Melvin Medina and David McGuire, by the way. And I sat on this task force, and we went into 2 prisons to talk about collateral consequences of incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people. We went into the prison, or the male's prison, and then we went into the female's prison the next day. The dynamics of both prisons was completely too parallel from each other. They were totally opposite, polar opposites. I mean, they were not parallel, polar opposites. When we went to the men's prison, we saw that they were free to speak. They weren't like held at a certain time point. Even if they were, they went past it with no judgment.
They weren't censored.
Right. The women, on the other hand, was censored. It broke my heart. And then you heard the men were talking about, yeah, we this, and this is what we're gonna do. They come up with some viable ideas, Babz. I promise you. It was just like, yes, okay, great. When I went to the women's prison, it was not that. We had 3 people standing behind us, me, Robin, and whoever else was sitting at the table. They were standing behind us like this. They weren't in uniform, but the stance alone is intimidating. They had the women facing us and we facing them, but these people are behind us. The speeches and the talks that the women gave were not as fluid as what the men gave. They called themselves felons. They referred to themselves as negative connotations. And I was sitting here and I could not hold back. And I said, stop calling yourself felons. You are a person. They were taking away their humanistic right? The humanistic character. Thank you, Jeff, for that. The character of being human. And they were monetizing it, not monetizing it, but putting it in a space of it doesn't exist because I'm a felon. I'm a felon. And I said, no, you're not a felon. You are a person. You are a woman who committed a felony. So use first person first. So in order for the reentry population, the women and men coming home, and I'm going to say women because that's my focus. The women, in order for the women that's coming home to live in a successful post-conviction, they have to start with the mindset.
Yeah.
They have to believe in themselves first, and that's not the case at York Correctional Institution. They're not. It's only a small portion of people that's getting that help and helping them to believe in themselves, and that's in that work unit that only stems from the population of 18 to 25. We have other people in that prison. We have 900 and something, almost 1,000 women in that prison, and the population from 18 to 25 that are sentenced is not a great population. So what happened to the rest of the people? They're still feeling ostracized. They be talked down to. So they coming home with this on their back, on their shoulders. So we got to start from scratch. So in order for the reentry to happen and be successful, we got to get them while they're inside and change their mindset of how they're going to live and who they're going to be when they come home. Because it doesn't happen when you come home. It happens when you're inside and you decide, I'm done and this is what I want to do. Not everybody get the opportunity to have a counselor to be their personal psychiatrist or psychologist.
Okay.
And so yeah.
So we got like 1 minute left, and
okay.
Jeff and I always ask this question. So for you, Tiheba, give us the biggest dream for you, Tiheba Bain, not for Tiheba Bain as organizer or freedom fighter, but Tiheba Bain, the woman. 1 minute.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
What do you want? What is your biggest dream for yourself?
Personally, I want to be able to say, well done. That's a good thing. Tiheba, you help with that. That's a good thing. I'm not reaching for the stars. I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for my work to be well, not as an organizer, but I'm looking for my family and I to grow and to become a unit without and to say, whew, you can sit back and relax right now. That's me as a person, right? Yeah, I'm not reaching for the stars. I just want to be able to enjoy the rest of my life. And
right, Tiheba, tell our audience how they can. Tell them how they can reach you real fast.
I can be reached on Facebook. I have Women Against Mass Incarceration Facebook. I also have Tiheba Bain. And Twitter is Tiheba Bain at Whammy at USA. My phone number 917-600-2747, and I'm getting ready to launch my website as soon as I get off this phone. It's not completed. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tiheba.
Thank you, Tiheba.
I so appreciated this conversation more than I can tell you. Jeff, this was wonderful.
Thank you. Babz, I think we did okay.
I think we did all right. Our next show is April 3rd. And we have Harold Dean Trulier, Director of the Healing Communities Prison Ministry. So thank you, Harry Droz, for riding shotgun for us today.
Yeah, and hopefully this came out over the air and on Facebook Live. And Babz, I love you, and it's so wonderful, and I'll speak to you later.
And thank you to everybody who watched me on the, I did a watch party, so I got a bunch of people in the chat room. So thank y'all.
All right. Bye, everybody.